Welcome to tonight's Saturday Night Special, number 42, where I talk with you about did you decide or did you feel?
I'm Fraser Rice, author of Wealth Actually. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the right relationship with all of your gifts is the key to doing this. One way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship podcast with my friend Scott Mader.
And right now, as I scroll through Facebook and see all of the posts from people, both good and bad, people yelling at each other, people emotionally attacking each other because of how people feel and what their views are, I'm reminded over and over and over that all too often we don't really make a decision. We just respond out of how we feel.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In tonight's Saturday Night Special, I talk with you about emotional decision making, why it is somewhat good and somewhat bad, and the fact about why you really don't make logical decisions in many cases anyway. You know, one area that a lot of folks need some help with is around the area of productivity. Getting not just more things done, but actually getting the right things done can be really, really tough. I've got a course called Productivity for Your Passion that's designed to help you do this and then to hold you accountable and walk with you so that you can tailor productivity not just to be getting more done, but actually getting the right things done. What's more, we take the approach of looking at your personality and how you actually look at things in the world and tailor the productivity system to your personality. Because the truth is, a lot of the systems that are out there are written really well for somebody with a particular personality type. But if you have a different approach to things, they just don't work. But there's tools and techniques and approaches that you can take that will work for anyone. And we help you do that in Productivity for Your Passion. Check it out over at inspiredstewardship.com/launch. Right now, with everything that's been going on in the world, it's made me think a lot about decision making, especially about the idea of emotional decision making and both the good and the bad that comes with that. You know, the truth is that all of us, all human beings, no matter how we're wired, no matter how we were brought up, no matter our family of origin, no matter what we've studied in school, we all are emotional decision makers at some level. Now, some of us are more affected by emotion and others of us are less affected by emotion. But the truth is we all make decisions at an emotional level every single day. Stop and think about it. Any decision that you've made where it was just a snap decision made off of your gut, that feeling that you get that this is just the right thing to do, that is an emotional decision. You know, the truth is there's studies that show that there's such a thing as what they call the halo effect, which is basically when you have good feelings about someone, you tend to look at them and understand their actions and give them sort of the benefit of the doubt more than when somebody is somebody you don't have a good feeling about. You know, the truth is that we have different feelings. And those feelings affect how we see things, how we think about things. And oftentimes we make decisions based off those feelings, even if we think we aren't. You know, I often talk to people about sales and marketing and these sorts of things. And I explain to them that most of the time we actually make decisions with some level of an emotional decision, and later we justify that with logic anyway. How does emotion affect our decision? Well, if you have positive emotions about a person or about an event or about something, you have a tendency to be more favorable in your approach to it. And sometimes, even if you're just surrounded by other people who are thankful, who are happy, who are outgoing, that lifts your mood and makes you more inclined to make certain decisions. We also make emotional decisions out of stress and fear and anger, where we try to do something like go purchase something because the dopamine hit that it gives us, the good feeling that it gives us, lifts our bad spirits. This is self-medicating or retail therapy sometimes, where we go out and we do things like spend money or socialize with others and spend money doing it. Why? So that it will lift our mood. Similarly, when you have a dark mood, it can affect your decision making. It can make you go out and do things or choose things that you wouldn't normally choose, both for the good and the bad. Sometimes that negative feeling causes you to do something like spend money you really shouldn't spend, or say yes to a decision that you shouldn't really say yes to, simply to get that good feeling of positive motion. It makes us sometimes susceptible to hoaxes and abuse. And what's more, if the emotion of the post or the comment that we see or the person that's talking to us is in alignment with how we already feel, then we end up with a cognitive bias that causes us to be more likely to accept that statement. And by the same token, when you see things that are out of alignment with how you feel, you immediately reject them. You know, the truth is, all of this stuff is set up in our brain to protect us. It helps us make decisions quickly, because the truth is, if we had to stop and think and reason about every single decision that we make every single second of the day, we would never do anything but think. It's a shortcut. But the problem is that shortcut often steers us wrong. It makes us go into behavior and actions and attitudes that aren't really for our best. You know, you don't really make logical decisions most of the time. You make emotional decisions. Even those of you that are wired with a high C component, a very perfectionist, rule-oriented, detail kind of personality, even those folks still make decisions off of emotion, but the emotion is a drive for perfection, for rightness, for fairness. No matter how you're wired, if you're an I, the emotion is about acceptance and being valued for who you are. If you're an S, it's about caring and kindness for others. If you're a D, it's about results and goal-oriented sorts of things. But in all cases, there is an emotional core, not just a logical decision. If you stop and think about it, 99.9% of the time, you do not sit down and generate a whole bunch of choices and then logically think about the pros and cons of each one before you make a decision. So when do you know to actually take that step and slow down? If you find yourself making decisions constantly out of a negative place, out of trying to avoid something out of fear, it's time to stop and inject some logical decision making. If it's a really big, impactful decision that's going to affect you for years to come, it's important that you stop and you generate and make those logical decisions. This is one of those things that I work on with folks as a coach, is helping them see the option space and recognize when it's time to make a logical decision. Because the interesting thing is, if you have an accountability partner who's a coach, because they aren't in the thick of the situation, it's much easier for us to step outside of the emotion. This is why talking it over with a friend is often a good step if you're trying to help make a more logical decision. All of these are things you need to think about and reflect on when you're thinking about how you feel. And right now, as I scroll through Facebook and see all of the posts from people, both good and bad, people yelling at each other, people emotionally attacking each other because of how people feel and what their views are, I'm reminded over and over and over that all too often we don't really make a decision. We just respond out of how we feel. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor. Go over to inspiredstewardship.com/iTunes rate, all one word, iTunes rate. It'll take you through how to leave a rating and review and how to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get every episode as it comes out in your feed. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.